The Hidden Truth of Oji Mansion. Ikin sat in his grand living room, staring at the large painting of a lion hanging on the wall. The lion stood tall, strong, and confident. But Ikin didn't feel like that lion. He felt small, uncertain, and troubled. His mansion in Oji was the most beautiful in town. He had everything: wealth, a successful business, and a beautiful wife, Nneka. From the outside, he looked like a man who had it all, but inside, he carried a heavy burden. Lately, something had been bothering him. It was a question that wouldn't leave his mind: does Nneka truly love me for who I am, or is it just for my money? At first, he dismissed the thought as mere insecurity. But he had noticed small things, things that made him uneasy. He saw the way Nneka treated their house staff. She was sweet and respectful when he was around, but once she thought no one was watching, she spoke to them with sharp words, impatience, and sometimes even cruelty. One day, he overheard her shouting at the housekeeper, Ifeoma, over a small mistake. It had been a simple accident: a cup of tea spilled on the table. But Nneka reacted as if it were the end of the world. If you can't even do your job properly, what use are you? Nneka snapped, her voice cold. Ikin had never seen that side of her before. Was she pretending to be kind around him? A deep sigh escaped his lips. The only person he could talk to about this was his father, Chief Obinna. Just as he was lost in thought, he heard footsteps approaching. He looked up and saw his father walking into the room. "Papa," Ikin greeted, his voice tired. Chief Obinna was an old man with wise eyes. He had built his fortune from nothing and taught Ikin everything he knew about life and business. Despite his wealth, he remained humble, always wearing simple white clothes and leaning on his walking stick. He sat down beside Ikin and studied his son's troubled face. "My son, why do you look like a man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders? Talk to me." Ikin hesitated, then sighed. "Papa, I've been thinking a lot about Nneka. I don't know if she really loves me for me or just because I'm rich." Chief Obinna raised an eyebrow. "What makes you say that? Has she done anything to make you doubt her?" Ikin shook his head. "Not directly. But I've seen how she treats the house staff when she thinks I'm not around. It makes me wonder if she's only pretending to be nice to me too." His father stroked his beard thoughtfully. That's a serious thing to consider, my son. But feelings alone are not enough. You need proof. You need to know for sure." Ikin nodded. "Exactly. But how? I can't just ask her, 'Do you love me for my money?' She'd never admit it, even if it were true." For a moment, the room was silent. Then, Chief Obinna tapped his walking stick on the marble floor and smiled. "I have an idea," he said. Ikin turned to him, curious. "What is it, Papa?" His father leaned forward. "What if we test her?" Ikin frowned. "Test her? How?" "I will pretend to be your gateman for a while," Chief Obinna said. "I'll live here, do the work, and see how she treats me when she thinks I'm just an old man working for you." Ikin's eyes widened. "Papa, you want to pretend to be a gateman? But you're a chief. People will think I've lost my mind, letting my own father work as a gateman." Chief Obinna chuckled. "Let people think what they want. This is about finding the truth. If Nneka is truly kind, she will treat me well, no matter who I am. But if she's only putting on a show for you, we will find out." Ikin hesitated. The idea seemed crazy. But at the same time, it made sense. "Papa, are you sure about this?" he asked. "It will be hard work, and what if she finds out?" "She won't," his father said confidently. "I will dress the part. No one will recognize me. And as for hard work, I am not afraid of that. I've lived through tougher times than you can imagine." Ikin nodded slowly. Alright, Papa. Let's do it. But we need to plan carefully. If she finds out, everything will be ruined. Chief Obinna smiled. Don't worry, my son. Leave the details to me. The next day, Chief Obinna began his transformation. He went to a small tailor in town and ordered the simplest clothes, worn-out trousers, a faded shirt, and an old cap. He also bought a pair of dusty sandals that looked like they had seen better days. When he returned home dressed in his disguise, Ikin could hardly believe his eyes. Papa, you look completely different. I wouldn't recognize you if I didn't know it was you. Chief Obinna laughed. Good. That means Nneka won't recognize me either. They went over the plan one last time. Chief Obinna would arrive at the mansion the next morning, introduced by the house manager as the new gateman. He would live in the small gatehouse at the front of the property, just like any other worker. Remember, Chief Obinna said, you must treat me like an employee while I am here. Act as if I am just another worker. I understand, Papa, Ikin said. But promise me one thing, if it gets too much for you, we'll stop. I don't want you to suffer. His father smiled. You worry too much, my son. I will be fine. The next morning, everything went according to plan. The house manager introduced Chief Obinna to Nneka as Papa Obinna, the new gateman. Nneka barely looked at him. She nodded quickly before walking off to the living room. Chief Obinna noticed her lack of interest but didn't let it bother him. He settled into the small gatehouse, a humble room with a bed, a chair, and a tiny table. It was nothing compared to the luxurious home he was used to, but he didn't mind. This was all part of the test. As the day went on, he began his duties, opening and closing the gate, sweeping the driveway, and keeping watch over the entrance. Nneka passed by a few times but didn't say much. Her silence wasn't exactly rude. But it wasn't warm either. That evening, Ikin met his father in a quiet corner of the mansion. How was your first day, Papa? Ikin asked. Chief Obinna chuckled. Interesting. Nneka didn't say much today, but I can tell, she doesn't think much of me. She barely looks at me when she walks by. Ikin frowned. Maybe she's just shy around new people. Let's give it a few days. Of course, Chief Obinna said. This is just the beginning. We shall see how she behaves as time goes on. The sun rose over Oji, casting golden light over the grand mansion. Chief Obinna, now disguised as Papa Obinna the gateman, woke up early in his small gatehouse. He stretched his old bones and stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the morning air. It had been years since he had lived in such simple conditions. The small bed in the gatehouse was nothing like the large, comfortable bed in his own house, but he didn't mind. He was here for a reason, to uncover the truth about Nneka. As he swept the driveway, the sound of footsteps caught his attention. Nneka stepped out of the house, her phone in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. She wore a bright yellow dress, her hair tied neatly into a bun. She didn't glance at Chief Obinna as she walked past him toward her car. Good morning, madam, Chief Obinna said, bowing slightly. Nneka didn't respond. She sipped her coffee and scrolled through her phone as if he wasn't there. Chief Obinna nodded to himself, interesting. He continued sweeping, but he kept his eyes on her. Nneka got into her car and drove off without a single word. Later that afternoon, she returned from her outing. Her car pulled up to the gate, and Chief Obinna hurried to open it. He moved as quickly as he could, but she was already honking impatiently before he even reached the latch. Poro, she called out sharply, using the nickname the house staff had given him. Yes, madam, Chief Obinna said, bowing his head. What took you so long? Do you think I have all day to sit in this car waiting for you? I'm sorry, madam, he said humbly. You should be, she muttered, rolling her eyes before driving in. Chief Obinna sighed as he closed the gate behind her. He had expected this, but it still stung to see her treat him this way. That evening, Ikin met his father in the small gatehouse. He had waited until the house was quiet, not wanting anyone to overhear their conversation. "How was today, Papa?" Ikin asked, sitting on the edge of the small bed. Chief Obinna chuckled. "It was enlightening." Ikin frowned. "What do you mean?" "She ignored me this morning when I greeted her. Then, when she came back, she snapped at me for not opening the gate fast enough." Ikin sighed. "Maybe she was in a hurry." Chief Obinna gave his son a knowing look. "Hurrying is one thing. Treating people without respect is another." Ikin rubbed his forehead. "Papa, I don't know what to think. I want to believe she's just stressed." Chief Obinna nodded. "We shall see, my son. This is just the beginning." The next day, Chief Obinna decided to test her patience further. While sweeping the driveway, he deliberately left a small patch of dirt near the gate. He wanted to see if Nneka would notice, and how she would react. That evening, as she returned home, he quickly opened the gate for her, bowing slightly as usual. But this time, she didn't just drive through. She stopped halfway, rolled down her window, and pointed at the patch of dirt. "Poro," she called, her voice sharp. "Yes, madam," Chief Obinna said, stepping closer to her car. "What is this?" She pointed at the dirt near the gate. Chief Obinna looked at it, pretending to be surprised. "Oh, madam, I must have missed that spot. I'll clean it right away." "You should have cleaned it the first time," she snapped. "I told you I want this place spotless, not looking like some dirty village road." "I'm very sorry, madam," he said humbly. She scoffed and drove off without another word. That night, Ikin found his father in the gatehouse again. "How was today, Papa?" he asked. Chief Obinna sighed. "Your wife shouted at me over a tiny speck of dirt." Ikin frowned. "Papa, maybe she's just having a rough week." Chief Obinna shook his head. "My son, this isn't about one bad day. This is about who she is when she thinks no one important is watching. And so far, I don't like what I'm seeing." Ikin leaned back in his chair, thinking. He loved Nneka. He had believed she was a kind and loving woman. But now he was starting to wonder. His father's words echoed in his mind, "This is just the beginning." The morning air in Oji was crisp as Chief Obinna stood by the gate, waiting for the day to unfold. He had seen enough signs to make him suspicious, but he needed more proof before drawing any conclusions. Ikin had agreed to let the test continue, even though he was struggling with what he was seeing. His father had always been a man of wisdom, and Ikin knew better than to ignore his concerns. As Chief Obinna swept the driveway, the housekeeper, Kamsi, walked by carrying a large tray of food toward the kitchen. He smiled at her. "Good morning, my dear," he greeted. "Good morning, Papa Obinna," Kamsi said warmly. "How are you adjusting to life here?" He chuckled. "It's different from what I'm used to, but I'm learning." She nodded. "If you ever need anything, just let me know. I know how difficult it can be to work for Madam Nneka." Chief Obinna raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what do you mean?" Kamsi hesitated, looking around to make sure no one was listening. Then she sighed. "She's not a bad person, but she doesn't have patience for people she thinks are beneath her. She can be very harsh." Chief Obinna nodded thoughtfully. "I see." Later that afternoon, he decided to conduct another test. While Nneka was sitting in the garden scrolling through her phone, he approached her hesitantly. "Madam," he said in a soft voice. Nneka looked up, her eyebrows raised. "What is it?" "I'm sorry to disturb you, madam, but I need new cleaning supplies." The ones I have are almost finished. Nneka frowned. And why are you telling me? Isn't that Kamsi's job? I just thought. Well, don't think, she snapped, cutting him off. Tell Kamsi, not me. I have more important things to do. Chief Obinna lowered his head. Yes, madam. I'm sorry. She waved him away dismissively and returned to her phone. He walked away slowly, shaking his head. She doesn't even see me as a person. That evening, Ikin visited his father in the gatehouse. How was today? He asked, sitting down with a sigh. Chief Obinna leaned forward, his face serious. Your wife dismissed me like I was nothing today. I only asked for new cleaning supplies, and she snapped at me. Ikin's heart sank. Papa. I don't know what to do. I love Nneka. But everything I'm seeing is making me doubt her. Chief Obinna placed a hand on his son's shoulder. My son, love is important. But so is respect. A person who does not respect others cannot truly love. Ikin rubbed his face in frustration. I want to believe she's just stressed. Maybe she's been handling too much on her own. Chief Obinna sighed. Stress does not excuse treating others badly. Ikin didn't reply. He knew his father was right. Hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, comment, share it with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.